Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you a dedicated series review of the Licanius Trilogy by James Islington. The Licanius Trilogy is an epic fantasy series that consists of The Shadow of What Was Lost, An Echo of Things to Come, and The Light of All That Falls. This series is set in a world in which there used to be these magic wielders known as augurs, who had the ability to divine the future. They ruled over as they were revered as these almost deity-like beings, given their ability to protect their people by predicting the future. They also had working for them the gifted, who were a different type of magic user. However, when the augurs' visions begin to go embarrassingly wrong, they disappear so that they can assess why their magic is failing them. Therefore, they leave the gifted in charge of the realm in the meantime. The gifted then begin to abuse that power to the point where they become tyrannical. An uprising then overthrows the gifted, has them agree to some tenets that allow them to remain alive, otherwise they are to be executed. These tenets are magically binding and essentially allow them to coexist with non-magic folk who do not trust them, so long as the gifted agree to these tenets that will bind them to not being able to harm anyone who is not gifted. These tenets will allow them to essentially be controllable. The gifted then, for the most part, at least when they are young, live in these schools that have a very monastery feel to them. They're very secluded from the rest of the world. You need special permissions to be able to leave, and if your child is presenting gifted abilities, then they will be left at one of these schools. A decent while after these events, we are following Davian, who is a young man who clearly has an attachment with the essence, which is the magic of the world, and therefore has been left at a school for the gifted. When you are gifted, you are to undertake some trials to show what your abilities are. However, should you fail them, you are left as a shadow, which cuts you off from the essence. Davian is not able to access his magic, and he is fairly certain that he is going to fail his trials. However, some of the adjudicators that are here to witness his trials arrive. One of them takes Davian aside and informs him that he believes that Davian is actually an augur. And there is this barrier up in the north that keeps humans from these monsters that are kept on the other side of the barrier. And the barrier is beginning to weaken and they need an augur to help. So he whisks Davian away, and then ensues a long journey to the north. We begin to get other perspectives as well, one of them being a young man who has no notion of who he is or where he comes from, believing that he has had a psychotic break due to trauma, and that has left him with amnesia because his entire village seems to be dead. And then we are following some of the royalty of this realm. We are following people traveling to different places, and we get the politics and the social and the magical side of this world. Book one for me was a large flop. It was a huge flop. I really did not enjoy this book. I had quite a few issues with it. This series was originally self-published and then got picked up by a publisher. I don't know how much editing the publisher actually did to this book, because this one had a lot of issues that I would normally find in self-published books, namely within the dialogue. I found the dialogue to be really stilted. A lot of the intrigue was trying to be built up through dialogue. There was an entire conversation in the opening part of this book that was literally just like, it's time, but I understand if you're not ready. No, I think I'm ready. I think I should do this. So much of just this unfinished sentences. No one's actually saying anything to try and build intrigue, and it's really frustrating to read. And then there were a lot of things that it's just like, people don't talk like that. So the dialogue wasn't great. The setup of this book, also the problem being that it's not very innovative. It feels very fantasy 101. The magic was interesting, and I'm not normally a hard magic kind of fan, so that was an interesting one. I did find that I liked the world. I just didn't care about Davian, our protagonist, and I didn't feel like the plot was hugely innovative. There is a plot twist at the end of book one that definitely did not feel like a twist to me, and this only scraped a 3-star. On Core Pile, if it had been 1 point less on anything, it would have been a 2. star. So it was a very, very, very low 3-star. In September, I did, however, then pick up An Echo of Things to Come, which is book 2. And this one really picked up for me. There were still issues that I had with things like the dialogue and the writing style, but they weren't bothering me as much. I went in knowing that they were there. You know, you don't pick up the sequel to a book and think it's going to read like a completely different author's written it. So I knew going in what I was signing up for with that, so it bothered me less. But I found that the plot in this one definitely picked up in a way I wasn't expecting it to. I also liked the way the POVs were tackled in here, and I liked the falling action that this had as well. I think that it really did conclude well, which, given that a lot of books, especially in like epic chunky fantasy series, you do get that middle book slump. I actually feel like this is one of those that is more like an upward trajectory, where book 1 is the slumpy one and then it gets better, because I definitely did not feel the length of this one anywhere near as much as I felt the length of book 1, and I was definitely a lot more intrigued by this one than I was with book 1. And then thankfully book 3 really did continue that pace of book 2. Still a 4-star, not new favourite material, but it was definitely better than I had anticipated it being. I did kind of wonder if it would dip back down again because of a couple of things that happen in book 2. I didn't know exactly where that would leave this one. None of these books are particularly surprising. None of them are, wow, I've never read anything like this before. But these would be, one, a great foray into epic fantasy if you've not read it before, or if you want to step into hard fantasy with hard magic systems. I also think that they're a great series to get into if you are a fan of Sanderson. If you like Brandon Sanderson and you want to scratch that Sanderson itch, I think that these would work really well for that, because they do have like a really light writing style that helps you get through the series so much better than maybe the denser older, more classic fantasy. So while I do kind of lean a bit more towards the dense fantasy side, I do think that the levity of this is really, really compulsively readable. So while not necessarily a new favourite series, I definitely think that it really had its merits, and the last 2 books really did pick up from book 1. If you've read book 1 and you weren't the biggest fan, there were bits that were intriguing to you and you kind of want on the fence as to whether to continue, I would actually recommend continuing, because the sequels really do up the levels and the stakes, and I do feel like they are much better installments. And it's kind of a shame in a way that book 1, in my opinion, a much worse book than books 2 and 3, because I feel like if it had started out this way, I definitely would have stronger feelings towards the series as a whole. Now, there are some tropes in there that are not normally to my liking. 2 of my 3 biggest tropes that I hate are in especially book 1. So I am very hesitant to kind of critique that book on that basis, because they're tropes. So some people will talk about tropes, some people will deem tropes a spoiler. I don't really know where to fall on that, but there are 2 tropes that I actively dislike that were in this series. If you really want to know, then let me know and I will mention in the comments what the tropes are if you don't deem tropes spoilers. That was also a big detriment in book 1 to me, which did kind of persist in books 2 and 3, but obviously I know about them, and then on top of that it was a lot lighter and it was more subtle. I could handle it much better. That being said, that is it for this review. So overall, a good series with a steady upwards trajectory. Though it was a bit of a rough start, I'm really glad that I pushed through because I did enjoy the continuations. But that's all for me for today, so thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye!